All right, so this video is going to be about the Saturn and Aquarius transits, but it's more so about your rising. So the big chunk of this video is going to be talking about each rising sign and what's going to happen. Well, it's already happened. Jupiter and Saturn are both in Aquarius. That means it's going to move into a different house in your chart. And these are outer planets. And so though they are not personal planets, these are strong energies. One, they're in the same sign, right? So we have this energy in the same sign. And we also have, these are, Aquarius energies, the collective. It's things that can affect everybody and all of us. And we know that Jupiter deals with knowledge and Saturn deals with discipline and structure. And so those are all topics and things that are pretty significant. And so regardless of who we are, what our placements are, it's going to have an impact. Now, before that, I do want to dive into some details before we jump into the timestamps. Now, you can definitely just go straight to your timestamp. I get it. But sometimes I say things in the introduction that can help you connect dots to things that I might not say later in the video. So that's why I say, hang tight for a little bit if you can. Now, we already know that Saturn already went into Aquarius, Jupiter already went into Aquarius. These are the dates. Now, December 17th, 2020, May 7th, 2023, Saturn. So we're going to be in a long stretch with Saturn, which is interesting because even though Aquarius is about groups, we know that Saturn is teaching us a lesson, right? And we'll get to that in a moment. So we don't even know what 2023 is going to look like. We've already had so many unexpected upheavals this year and just a lot of just change, with the pandemic. So we don't know what 2023 is going to look like. Again, we can look at transits and things like that, but Jupiter is a little bit different where we're going to be in there for a while, but then it's going to go into Pisces in May for a little bit temporarily. And I think that's going to be a very interesting time as well because Jupiter is the original ruler of Pisces. Neptune is the modern ruler. And so I think there's definitely going to be a strong energy there. And I think we might need that energy at that time for whatever reason. And then we go back, Jupiter goes back into Aquarius until December 2021. This is why it's very significant. And it's important for you to understand what's going to happen likely if Jupiter and Saturn are in a specific house in your chart. You already experienced, right, for a while, all right, for a few years you had Saturn in Capricorn somewhere in your chart. Jupiter was in Capricorn. Jupiter did the same thing it did with Aquarius, right, in the chart. And so that is what we want to think about right now is what's likely to happen. Now, here's the problem. I want to also frame it. What's likely to happen is not the same as saying what's going to happen to me. A lot of times when people want readings or people want insights like what's going to happen, what's going to happen? I think the better question for us to ask ourselves is what is the potential? What can we do? Right? And that's why my philosophy on astrology is, yes, let's be real, but I can't, that's why my approach on the 12th house might be different than other things you read or other things because I've experienced it through the 12th house. It's not always this doom and gloom place. And yes, it can be challenging, but we can't be helpless. We can't say, oh, well, this is just a bad house. This is a bad placement. Yes, traditionally there are houses that are bad and good. Yes. But we have more tools in the modern world to enhance our lives. And that's what we need to use. So let me just jump into some other, parts that I think are really interesting about the dynamic between Saturn and Jupiter when it comes to this transit. Okay, so Saturn, we already know Saturn is restrictive. Saturn can give us and take. Saturn, it's like, I always said this in other videos, it's the overprotective parent. I'm not going to give you that yet. You got to work for it. And so because of that, what's happening a lot is like, the overprotective parent that wants their kid to do something a specific way. Actually, I don't know, overprotective parents sometimes might coddle their kids. But what I mean by Saturn, I guess, is more of this kind of, tough love type of parental energy. And so Saturn wants us to have structure and Saturn wants us to have a plan and a goal. But Aquarius is this free thinking energy, and Aquarius is this fixed energy, but at the same time it knows what it wants. But what we have to understand about Aquarius is like a lot of times people will say, well, oh, they're quirky and they're this and they're that. Firstly, yes, you can definitely have Aquariuses, especially Aquarius suns and risings, where you see that kind of uniqueness, that quirkiness, that I'm not going to do things the way society tells me to because I'm expressing myself through my own lens. But other thing we have to understand is as Aquarius is a fixed time, it definitely means that it knows what it's doing. It's so sporadic. And Uranus is the co-ruler of Aquarius, which, yes, in modern astrology it is, and Saturn's the traditional one. You know, I use both in my work, but they're so weird, they're so out there. It's like, actually, Aquarius energy knows what it's doing, though. It's not as, it's free, but it's free to do what it wants to do, and it has a goal, just like Saturn has a goal. Uranus and Aquarius has a goal. It's just different than how we are used to seeing it. And so with that, we have to understand that Saturn is going to restrict. Saturn's going to want to restrict. It's authoritative. Anytime we see Saturn, it wants to restrict, it wants to pull us away. And sometimes it's teaching us a lesson, but sometimes it can feel overbearing. Okay? That's what I meant. Overbearing parent, maybe. Okay. Sometimes Saturn restricts or is authoritative in order to help the group. So this is where you see, for instance, let me give you a movie. I think it's like iRobot. You ever seen iRobot, where it's like this revolutionary, Aquarius, technology, right? This revolutionary invention, these robots, they can, you know, take care of your house for you and all these things. And at the whole video, you know, Will Smith's character is like, no, something's wrong, something's wrong. But Saturn and Aquarius energy, it's almost like, but this is good for everybody. So I don't care what you think. This is good for everybody. That's where Aquarius energy can sometimes feel a little contradictory. It's like, wait a minute. We're doing this for the collective, but that one person thinks this, and it's like, well, oh, well, we have to do this for everybody. So it's not about the individual when you think of Saturn and Aquarius. For you, it might be in your individual chart. Now, moving over to Jupiter and Aquarius, we already know Jupiter is expansion. Wherever Jupiter is in your chart is where you want to spread the most, whatever the sign is in. So people who have Jupiter and Scorpio, they want everybody to kind of look beneath the surface, and they want everyone to understand the deeper, intense meaning of things. They want everyone to feel that intimacy maybe in the way they do, even if they're not a Scorpio sun. Jupiter and Aquarius folks, we actually like when people are individuals. We like that. We're okay with that. We don't judge as much, you know, because we're like, be you. You're not hurting anybody. Express yourself. Oh, that's different. That's cool. You know, so Jupiter wants to expand and wants everybody to have something. Right? Now, when Jupiter's in Aquarius, again, so we want people to have revolutionary ideas. We want people to be themselves. We're tired of seeing the same thing. Now it's not, you know, when we look at this energy, you feel free to shed light on new perspectives and innovation. You're less likely to rely on what the rules are. But again, I think this component of Saturn and Aquarius is we still need structure. So I know that some of us, I have a Jupiter return happening in Aquarius, and it's like, it's not there by itself. Saturn is there, but Saturn can sometimes be there to help us from not getting too far ahead of ourselves. Because remember, Aquarius energy, it's air. And Jupiter, it doesn't have limits. It can give too much. So I think this is why we have Saturn and Jupiter coming together. They can actually balance each other in a way. You know, and it helps, you know, us not be so impulsive all the time. So I'm going to start with Aquarius Rising, since we're talking about Aquarius energy. And so Aquarius Rising, so firstly, let me dive into this. You know, these are more so my notes, so I know what to say. I didn't feel like writing it out this time. And also, I'm not going to read all these to you, but basically, you know, Jupiter and Saturn was in Capricorn in your 12th house. And so what might have been happening in Capricorn makes us work hard for something. It makes us actually understand more what our goals truly are. And with that, you might have learned a lot about your faith, your discipline, gain inner knowledge during this time. I know a person who's an Aquarius rising, and during this time, they were more open about their religion. They were just sharing more about what they believe and they think than they usually do. And I think that was, now, again, not open to everybody, but kind of to people that they're close to, which is where I think people like them, you might see with Jupiter and Saturn in the first house, people like the person I know, they might be more open. Now they're more expressing, this is what I believe, this is what I think, not in a Sagittarius way, but again, Jupiter is ruler of Sagittarius, but more so Aquarius is here to try to give us an understanding of how things can impact other people. It's now here to understand more, what are we going to do in a way that is pushing society forward, right? It's not just about a belief system. That's more Sag energy, right? And so with Jupiter and Saturn in the 12th house for Aquarius risings before, it was a time for you to, you know, you might now have to share some of your personal challenges that you have as you go to the first house, because Saturn is about a challenge. And so you might find a growth in your sense of identity. First house, meaning it's Jupiter, growth, expansion. And Saturn is like reality. So you might be open to your experiences, or this might be a release for some of you. Some of you that have been hiding things for a while, this might be a great release for you to feel like, yes, it's okay for me to express what's different about me or what I've been going through. you know and that Mars energy, the first house, is not just about logic, but it's about also you claiming your individuality. It's claiming it, you asserting it and living in it and being okay with it. So for any Aquarius, again, this is potential for any Aquarius risings who this relates to. This is the best time to start to assert who you are and what you are, and feeling more comfortable with that in different ways. We can always assume we know who we are, but as we get older, we might have new alliances, we have new networks, we have new identities or new things we experience. People who were parents, you weren't worried about being a part of a parenting group before you were parents. People who've experienced certain things in life, you might have people who are like, they experienced something, a tragedy or something, and now they belong to a network of people who have shared experiences. We are always evolving, even if we know who we are. You also may find new alliances or to groups that might be different friendship, different people. It's not just about them coming together. It's about your identity, who you are. You might be like, I'm not into this anymore. This is who I am. I need to find people like this because this relates to who I feel like I want to assert myself as. So that's just something to notice if you are an Aquarius rising. Capricorn risings. So Jupiter and Saturn was just in your first house. They were just in your first house. And some of you, you might have gained more respect or authority during this time. You might have presented yourself in a way in which people came to you, wanted you to do certain things. Again, I know a Capricorn rising right now, and this person definitely, their reputation at work has definitely grew over the years. They're trusted to do things. They are seen as, if you give them something, they're going to do it. And also they might have been pushed. They're going, you might have felt pushed with this first house. It's like you're pushed to have more confidence, but at the same time, it helps you understand who you are in the fabric of different things. With the Capricorn risings, the Jupiter and Saturn in Capricorn in your first house helped you see who you are in relation to your goals, helped you see through your goals. It helps you get a sense of self, and maybe you able to accomplish certain things. It helps your confidence as well. Now with Jupiter and Saturn in your second house, goals are now linked to other people in some way. Doesn't mean the world, it can mean your family, your community. For some Capricorn risings who have achieved, you now have the potential to impart some knowledge, Jupiter on other people. Right? You might find this is the groundwork that you have for building up certain things, especially for those who have business ideas and it has something to do with other people or working with people. This might be a great time to do it. Now, here's the thing. You got to do what you need to do in your life. I know people were like, well, wait, we're in a pandemic. How can some people have made money during the pandemic by starting businesses. And the interesting thing is they found a need for something and they just did it. And I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm not saying it's easy. A lot of these people were working on their idea for years, and then they had the time to sit at home and say, well, let me just do something with myself. And so I just want to let you know, for some people, it's possible. Some people have. And again, we have to be conscious of the idea that there are a lot of people who are economically disadvantaged right now. There's always been economic disadvantage in America, but are people who have lost their jobs and things of that nature. So my hope and our hope should be that with this Aquarius energy, we are able to do something that helps people who have fallen on hard times because of something that is no fault of their own. Right? But guess what? Some of those same people in those situations have said, let me just do something with what I do have, and so it's also in some ways about being resourceful, the connections you have, who do you know, who's going to invest in you. Those are ideas for people who this resonates with. Again, if this doesn't resonate with you, there's other things probably going on in your chart, and that's perfectly fine. You're learning how to achieve goals that don't just have to do with you. And I think with Capricorn risings, it helps, especially you Capricorn risings who have placements in the first house. If you have Capricorn placements in the first house and you're Capricorn rising, you're used to things being just about your goals. And because you're so good at it, people rally around you and people are like, oh, what did you do? Oh, you're successful. Or you know how to do that. Or, oh, you're confident. But now we all need different experiences in our life to be a whole person. And so you might be learning right now that some of your goals and some of the way in which you're building up stability can relate to other people. You might, like I was just talking about the economic issues. Some people during this time might find they have to live with maybe family members, or they have a group of people that help each other financially. And you, even though that can sound hard, Saturn, it's kind of, Jupiter is giving awareness. So like, let's share. Let's share what we have. And I think that's the goal for a lot of you Capricorn risings. Sharing what you have, learning how to distribute around other people in your life. In that, for some ways, it can be actual financial, but also can mean resources. It doesn't have to mean just for support. You know, that could be another level to helping with that second house energy of, second house resources, things of that nature. Sagittarius rising. All right, so Jupiter and Saturn were just in your second house. And so a lot of you were thinking a lot about how to sustain yourself. You learned lessons relating to how independent you really are, and how you can be successful when it comes to having goals and staying the course. A lot of times with Sagittarius energy, optimism and a burst of energy and knowledge and so much wisdom, but cannot stay the course sometimes because there's a new thing that's interesting. And again, that is prominently seen in sometimes certain Sagittarius placements. Not all Sagittarius risings are not a Sagittarius, but if you're a Sagittarius rising and you also have a lot of fire energy in the chart or mutable energy in the chart, or first house placements in Sagittarius, what you probably feel is like a lot of times like you have these great ideas, but it's hard to stay the course. So that's what you probably learned with the second house is, wait, I can do this. And you probably have something to show for it now. You know, you built something up. There's something new that you've gained. Now remember, this Jupiter, Saturn, and Capricorn were around for a minute. I think Saturn went into Capricorn originally. Let me just look that up. I think it was 2007. Let me just see really quick because I don't want to give y'all inaccurate information. I believe it was originally went in Yep. 2017. So start 2007. Did I say 2007? 2017. So think about what 2017 to now was like for you. There was definitely some goals, gains, money, finances, property, things of that nature. Now, property can also be the fourth house, but traditionally, but the second house can also mean buying something that's going to give you reserves, right? What you own, what you have. Now, Jupiter and Saturn moving into your third house. Again, I'm kind of combining both planets together, but I'll delineate where needed. You're refocusing on learning new things. Now, Sagittarius risings, especially Sag risings with a lot of Sag in the chart, are ninth house placements. You already know. You're like, I already know this. I already know what I believe. I already know what I think. And this is why I'm so enthusiastic about expressing this to everybody. That's what some of you might say. But when you have Jupiter, which is your ruling planet of your rising, in the third house of learning, of communication, it's time to hunker down and it's time to learn something new. So now it doesn't mean stop believing what you believe, but it means slow down and learn something new. Maybe you learn something new about what you believe and it makes you even stronger of a messenger. Makes you even stronger of a person where people view you, rising, view you as someone who's knowledgeable, right? Because I love Sag energy, don't get me wrong. I have a Sag moon, right? I have a Sag moon. But what sometimes can happen with Sagittarius energy is it can become so tied to its belief that it can't focus on the facts. And sometimes those individuals, it's like it just blows up. It's like they just embellish or exaggerate. And it's like, wait a minute, did you check your facts? Or wait a minute. So now that's not all Sagittarius, don't get me wrong. I'm saying that's the negative of some of those placements sometimes. So it's time to add to your sense of truth and beliefs. Engage with other people, third house. You have to reconnect with siblings, people you grew up with, people who are in your inner circle. That is your focus. Not necessarily everybody, but the focus is your inner circle because these people are more likely to have your support. When I had a Jupiter transit in the third house, my inner circle helped me with goals that I had related to astrology. I went to my inner circle and these people I said, I want to start doing birth charts and who wants one. And this was when I was really, really new to it and I wasn't as strong as I am now, but those people still liked them. It still was good. It's just that I'm better now. But I went to my networks and those people were like, oh yes. And people I didn't even think would be into astrology wanted a reading. So that's what I did back then. So that's a different sign. It wasn't Aquarius, but Jupiter has that potential there. All right, so the Scorpio rising. So Jupiter and Saturn were just in your third house, and you might have learned a lot more about understanding how to do something in a better way. A lot of times with Scorpio energy, it's obviously it's fixed energy, and a lot of you do know how to do something really well. You know how to do something in an appropriate way, in an appropriate manner, because you're committed to something. You're going to do it the right way. If you're not committed to something, you're kind of going to be disconnected. You don't care. But you learned is more of an understanding of the Capricorn energy in your third house is learning. processing. How does this look? How does this feel, in a way in which you're able to learn more, in a way that inspires you and not just something that you have to do. And so Saturn in Capricorn, what it's doing is it was allowing you to make goals about what you wanted to learn, or what you wanted to understand more. This could even mean in what you consume as media, right? It doesn't have to mean you went to study something. It could mean simply the things, maybe every day at a certain time you watched a certain video or a certain YouTuber, or you watched a certain TV show, or you watched something. You're trying to understand something in a more concrete way, right? Maybe you were something like, I really want to learn how to do that. I'm going to watch a bunch of videos and see how to do that myself. So I'm hoping that a lot of you Scorpio risings were able to use this time in some way to do that, because that's what the energy was suggesting you were able to do. You learn from seeing progress and new insight over just the fixed energy of emotions. Sometimes we can get enjoyment, Jupiter expansion. We can get more knowledge off something we have to do that we don't want to do. Right? And Capricorn energy in your third house showed you that, the benefit of that. How do you learn to express and still feel true to yourself, but learn how to do something that's not married to this feeling that you have, right? Now, with Jupiter and Saturn moving into your fourth house in Aquarius, we do have a concentration on the group, on the family, whoever you considered family, whoever is a part of your family, even emotional ties to people who are not literally blood related to you is going to be a theme, depending on your life circumstance. Now, expansion is definitely possible when we have Jupiter in the fourth house. And Aquarius means multiple people, groups. And groups doesn't often mean society. If we're talking micro level, it's our family and such. So expansion, can mean an addition to the family. Somebody has children. Okay. But what it also can mean is someone buys a home. Okay, I've seen plenty. My Jupiter fourth house transit, that's when I bought a home. Now, again, it was in a different sign, and I didn't time it because of Jupiter, but it just so happened that the situation flowed very well within that transit. Now, with Jupiter being in Aquarius, though, it might mean you're not buying one by yourself, or somebody in the family is buying one for the family or something of that nature, or moving. Also can be moving from a place to another, maybe a better circumstances in general. Now, Saturn can mean restriction. Saturn, now remember, Aquarius already is ideology. It's come together with the thoughts. Let's come together with what we think. Let's come together. Aquarius energy is not about warmth. It's not to say everybody's not warm. I know plenty of warm Aquarius energy people, that are some of them warmer than some of the water signs. Don't get me wrong. But it depends on the person. You already know what I'm saying with that. But the issue here is that that's not Aquarius's MO. And since it's in the fourth house dealing with emotions, there can be restriction in some way from family, whether separation, loss, or something of that nature. Even if it's loss of contact, just something to watch out for. Now Jupiter's there to have light at the end of the tunnel, but don't be surprised if there's a certain separation or neglect in some way at some point with that Saturn energy. Now, I've had a Saturn transit before where that happened with a family member, and it was really weird because it was unheard of, but Saturn caused a restriction in our contact. And obviously other things, but no, actually it wasn't other things. It was like no real reason. That's why the transit stood out to me. Like, there was no reason for us not to be in contact. Nothing happened. It just was. That's why I had to look at the chart. I'm like, wait a minute, this is weird. There are goals and new opportunities related to the family sector. There can be positives there as well. There's new goals where it's like, it's not just about you, it's about the family. So people who move aren't going to say, I'm going to move to such and such to go get my dream job. People might say, let me think about my family, or I'm moving, let me take my sister and my mom or whoever along. Some people might reach out in that way. Now, processing your emotions is also important because this is a fourth house transit. And so you might do it in a way that releases holding on to certain emotions, because Aquarius is about logic. And so for some of you, you might have to release certain feelings that you have. You are allowed to be free of obligations that no longer fit your needs. Now, one thing I will say about Aquarius energy is that it is very obligatory. It's because remember, Saturn is the original ruler of Aquarius, and it has a similar attitude to family as Capricorn, where it's like, we're gonna do it. Look at Aquarius and Capricorn's actions towards their family. Don't worry about, oh, well, they're not hugging me. No, let's think. The actions of Capricorn, an involved Aquarius or Capricorn energy person, there's a sense of duty and loyalty there. I'm going to do what my family needs. All All right, so the Libra risings. Okay, so Jupiter and Saturn were just in your fourth house. All right, or when it comes to transits, for some people's actual transit chart might be delayed a little bit, where Jupiter and Saturn are both in Aquarius in your fourth house. Again, we use Placidus especially, but in general, Jupiter and Saturn are definitely going to be again together with Aquarius, but they were just together in your fourth house. For some of you, there were expansion of family responsibilities during this time, an increased amount of attention you had to give to family matters, perhaps. And again, as Libra risings, a lot of you are navigating life in a way in which, partnership is very important. And you also, there's a lot of one-to-one personal type of interactions that you enjoy. But this was more about the responsibilities of, the emotional obligation that you might have to other people, or even yourself. It was more so you having to really understand and face some of the things that you had to do. Now, the thing is, with Jupiter being there, it kind of made it not as heavy or intense as Saturn can be, because Jupiter is shedding light and it's giving knowledge and it's giving wisdom. And as you move forward, there's a lot of joy that you've gotten through a difficult process. You maybe had to learn a new goal or something new within the family structure. It was different. It kind of threw you off, but it might have allowed for you to have now a better understanding of how to handle specific situations in your life. And Jupiter now allows you to, you've processed that, and it brings you a sense of joy, satisfaction of like, wow, I just got over that. Wow, I was able to do it. I have new knowledge on how to handle this problem moving forward. Jupiter and Saturn moving into the fifth house in Aquarius is about, you can rediscover. It's for some of you, it's a little bit lighter of a lift, right? And I just had a fifth house transit, so it is a light lift. No matter what planet is in there, typically, it's about you rediscovering what makes you happy. It gives you a chance. So if you've been working really hard with something that took a lot of your attention, it took a lot of your emotional strength, you now should rediscover what you enjoy. Now, what it might mean, though, is, remember, we're dealing with Aquarius energy, right, in this fifth house, and we're dealing with, restriction in some way. It might mean that some people in your life might not relate to the new thing that you want to do. And this is more so a hobby, an interest, just something that brings you a sense of, goals, or even like knowledge. There's a combination there of goals, but also in order to achieve your goals, you have to immerse yourself in the experience, which is what a lot of that Jupiter expansive energy is. Generosity. You're giving a lot of attention to this area of your life. And with that, it does mean that some people might not relate. People in your life who you feel like, oh, well, we relate, we're cool. They might be like, oh, that's different. That's weird. Why are you doing that? But it's for you. It's not for them. Find something that requires your attention, focus, and that allows you to just embed yourself in knowledge and have fun with it. If it is something that is a goal financially, or if you're like, I want to make money off my talents or what I really love, that's, potentially something that you can do as well, but that's not the first step. The first step is to do something you love, something that you enjoy, rediscover what you enjoy. And it might have something to do with other people, because Aquarius energy is the group, right? But the fact that Saturn is there might mean it is restrictive. So you see what I'm saying? So it might restrict you from people that you're used to being around. And you kind of have to open broaden your horizons a little bit with that Jupiter and Aquarius energy. All right. And it's a great time for those of you who have hobbies or interests in things that you're good at, that you're skilled at through the fifth house. This is a great time through the fifth house to work on anything that can benefit other people. But it has to start from you first, because that's the fifth house energy. The fifth house energy always starts from self. Virgos. Okay. Virgo risings. Here we go. So we just had a Jupiter, Saturn, and Capricorn fifth house transit. And a lot of us were trying to try out new things, especially when it comes to projects, working on something that isn't a task. So for a lot of Virgo risings, I hope you all, like me in a way, doing something, putting energy, being excited, Jupiter, being industrious, Saturn, a goal that has nothing to do with work. A lot of Virgo risings, Virgo suns can be workaholics. This task has to get done and this has to be done this right way. So I'm really hoping a lot of you use that fifth house transit to have fun or to enjoy a hobby, enjoy something that you're doing. Now, if you're a Virgo rising, we have obviously Capricorn on the cusp of our fifth house. And so, especially if we use whole signs, so obviously Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn. So a lot of us had the ability to have really serious goals. When we actually like something, Now, again, it depends on the rest of your chart. The ability to keep moving with it, all right? Keep going, keep doing it, because your goals are serious in nature. It's not just about fun, but some of us could stand to have more fun. It's about, oh, this is so fun. How do I make this something I can do every day? Or how do I make that you always push and challenge yourself to do more? You learn discipline as well. So again, for Virgo risings, if there's anything worth it that you did within that 5th house energy, now the question is, can you bring it along into the 6th house? The 6th house is a routine, structure, organization, daily life. It's where we put some more work into something and we make it a little bit more tangible. So if any of you Virgo risings enjoyed anything, and you might just leave it at that, I enjoyed it, that's it. But if it's anything like you are working on a business or a project could be a home project, it could be you might have a YouTube channel, I don't know, you might just have something that you make, that you create, whatever you were doing, can you bring it around into your daily life 6th house? Because if we go all the way around the wheel, right? Let's think about that. Our transits, we can accomplish something through one thing. You now can have a greater impact on other people's ideas and thoughts. Okay? Because Aquarius energy is like, let's come together, the meeting of the minds, and let's talk about ideas, not just things, not just me and you, right? That's like more Libra energy. But Aquarius is like, let's talk about society, or let's talk about ideas, or how do we improve everything, or how do we make this something that everyone can benefit from, right? Now, Virgo is related to improvement, but Virgo is improving the tangibles, right? Looking at something or situation, being like, let's fix this specific thing. Aquarius energy, we're now thinking of how do we impact other people in a grander way. And then health goals are optimal now. With Jupiter, now Saturn, though we can say Saturn is restrictions or setbacks, yes, well, guess what? It can be a great restriction for people who need to lose weight, okay? Saturn can be, now if that's up to you if you feel like you do or don't. I'm now back on my goal, like, I'm back to doing what I know works for me. Intermittent fasting works for me. So it's interesting that right before the transit is when I got more interested in it. I wasn't even thinking about the transit, right? But health goals are optimal because Saturn can help you with restriction. Now, Jupiter is expansive, but here's what I think can happen for people. I think Saturn is going to be in the 6th house more than Jupiter. Because remember, Jupiter temporarily goes into Pisces in the spring, early summer. Right? Well, it goes into Pisces for a little bit in May, and then it comes back out in July, right? What that means is Saturn is really the mainstay of that 6th house until 2023. It's Saturn. That's the permanent resident there. And so even though Jupiter can be an expansion, and if we ever want to talk about physical traits and things like that, yes, Jupiter can relate to weight gain, but Jupiter can also make you knowledgeable, and it can make you have a community of people that's supporting you. So finding a community of people that support you if you have health goals, and also Jupiter can make you excited about it. You're excited. You want this to work. You have a kind of cheerful idea about cheerful mindset, a positive mindset, positivity about your health. And again, you might not need to lose weight, but you might just need to focus on something health. You might be someone that maybe you don't need to, but you could be healthier. You could be someone who maybe has a health condition, and if you just did this one thing, it might improve it. So it could be in anything, but I think there's a potential there with that placement, that transit. Leos. Okay, the Leos. So Jupiter and Saturn and Capricorn were just in your 6th house. And, you had to find a way to make your life functional. I feel like a lot of Leo risings, when I kept doing the horoscopes, it was always about Leo and having to work at something and having to figure something out about their life and having to tailor something. And I feel like a lot of you, again, if it was just Saturn by itself the whole time, perhaps, especially since we also have Pluto there as well, kind of forcing you to do that. But you have enjoyed setting goals for yourself and removing some of the more lighthearted goals and focusing on real improvement. So Leo risings, yes, everybody loves y'all. Everyone loves Leo. Well, most of us do. But some of y'all, I'm not a Leo. I'm a Leo, Mars and Mercury, but I can't claim Leo. But a lot of you might feel sometimes like because people expect this from you, this lightheartedness, this kind of fun or this kind of energy. And again, I think it's really, the pandemic has affected everybody. But if you want to look at it astrologically, definitely certain signs are probably more prone to feeling out of their element with this restriction. It's actually restricted for everybody, meaning Even people who are introverts, this is not fun for anybody. The anxiety over just like, the outcome of what's going on, and just the fears and the health implications and the unknowns. It's not, nobody likes this. Like, even your biggest introvert, this is not great for anybody. But I think especially for you Leo risings, where you're used to navigating life in a certain way, if you're a Leo rising, you have, right, first house, Virgo is the second house, third house is Libra, right? So even your inner circle relating to people, like, you might feel restricted, right? If we look at what the whole wheel of your horoscope looks like. So with Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius in your seventh house, there's now relationship themes. Now, relationships can be romantic. So I do think some Leo risings will probably come out of this transit with a better understanding of serious relationships, or having had a serious relationship, right? And the reason I say that as well is because Saturn can represent long-term commitment, Saturn, age, maturity, whether that means an actual person or it means the situation of something. There will be something unique about that person. So I do think that some Leo risings that are trying to get into relationships might feel like they have to, it's not about lowering your standards, but who you might end up with might not be who you thought you would. You might find yourself relating to different people at this time who you usually wouldn't relate to, and it might be very circumstantial. You're in a similar circumstance. Something forces you to relate to each other. And you'll see what experiences, insight, and motivation these people can offer you. So it's not just about you, and it's about what they can offer you, what these people can teach you or show you through the relationships, and also what you could probably show them as well, because we do think of reciprocation with the seventh house. I get, you get, we give, and but so I do think now those who are already in relationships, there might be just a difference in what your relationship might grow. It might grow in some way, especially with Saturn can mean long term. Jupiter can mean, now again, if a person has really positive transits and aspects, for some people it could mean like an engagement or something like that. If they have like Jupiter trining Venus and Saturn doing something really positive with another house, a trine or something, or a conjunct, obviously. Well, conjunct wouldn't be that, because the only conjunct you can have is if it's in Aquarius right now. Or, I don't want to go too much into this. Technically, especially when you use Placidus, technically you can have a conjunct if it's two different signs, but it has to be signs that are right next to each other, and it has to be because the one sign just changed into the next sign. You get what I'm saying? So like if somebody has 29 degrees, they have a placement, Mercury at 29 degrees Gemini. Mercury's at 29 degrees in Gemini. And they have Venus 1 degree Taurus, that can be a conjunct, even though they're different signs. I'm not talking about that. That's a whole different video. But anyway, Leo risings, relationships, but also Saturn is going to force you to mature through these relationships and gain more wisdom through Jupiter as well. You're going to come out of it. Now, again, when I say you're going to, you have to put the work in. You're going to, like, you'll give readings or you'll give a horoscope, and most people are like, yes, I need to do that. But any person who's sitting there like, well, that didn't happen for me, or that, what did you do with the energy? It's not just about being a sitting duck. Astrology, yes, certain things are likely to happen, but what are you doing as well to really be the captain of your life, Okay, Cancer risings. Okay, the Cancer risings. So Jupiter and Saturn would have just been in your seventh house, obviously because Capricorn is your opposite. Is your descendant sign on the seventh house cusp, and obviously as a Cancer rising descendant, that's on the first house cusp. So a lot of you might have learned some lessons regarding relationships. And the thing with Saturn is Saturn's always trying to teach us a lesson so that way we don't have to make the same mistake. And I know that a lot of people fear Saturn, but Saturn sometimes is restrictive because it doesn't want you to make those mistakes. If you're Saturn, I say it's very parental energy. Your parent, don't play with that kid. Don't play with them. That's the wrong crowd. And you're like, no, I'm going to do what I want to do. But your parent is right. That's what Saturn sometimes is like. And so Jupiter gives us wisdom through experience, though. So Jupiter is like, I'm just going to try this, and I don't even know if it's going to work, but I have hope. And I'm optimistic this can work. And so a lot of you have a better understanding of what you want in relationships and what wisdom you have. You feel wiser now to make certain decisions about the future. You might have experienced different ways of showing how you care. Now, Cancer risings, we know you're Cancer rising, and you have planets in Cancer in the first house, right? right? We have these, you know, if you have any conjuncts from your ascendant to the first house, what's happening is like there's that Cancer energy is truly there. It's not just your rising, but you actually have Cancer placements. And so the way that you show emotion is usually very pure directional way as a cardinal sign. But what's happening here is Capricorn in your 7th house of partnership means you had to experience your emotions in a different way. You had to understand that even though we all have a way we respond to things, sometimes we have to switch it up. We have to have boundaries and structure. We have to have a goal. So some Cancer risings might have in some way, really through their relationships or, you know, or through people trying to be in relationship with them, really had to learn boundaries, really had to say like, okay, I'm going to try this, but I already know what I want out of this situation. You know, and with Jupiter and Saturn moving to the 8th house, I think you have a really, some of you, you know, it depends on what you decide to do. You know, 8th house is this intense emotional decisions that we make, and it is where we feel we are able to make decisions on what we want to feel. And with that, that is why sometimes it's linked to this concept of union, because we're coming together because we've made a decision, not just, you know, an association. It's, I've made this decision. 8th house holds tight to what it wants. This is commitment. That's why sometimes it can even be considered joint assets. That's a commitment with somebody. That's legal. That's a commitment. That's 8th house. Whatever we want to talk about, 8th house, I'm committed. It's intense. I'm going to go into this deep. You may feel drawn to only really connecting to causes and people. Causes, Aquarius, right? Society. Don't forget, Aquarius is society. It's beyond ourselves. It's where we go to belong to something outside of ourselves. But the 8th house is not an open house. I call some houses open, meaning we see it. We see what's going on in the 1st house, the 5th, and the 9th. 10th as well. We see it. In 12th house, we don't know what's going on. And in the 8th house, people are selective in what they choose to show. And so you are going to want to have alliances with things that are purposeful and that give you a sense of ambition. So you're probably not likely right now just to join some random group because you feel lonely, or join some random association because you feel lonely. You're trying to find something that feels like you belong. You want to feel like you belong, but you want to really truly feel it. And so that might mean you disconnect from things that you don't truly feel anymore. You might end some things right now. 8th house can be endings, right? This is a great time to recover from setbacks from the past and find a support group. Okay? You may be drawn to the experiences of others at this time, especially difficult ones. For people who, again, some transits are really good, especially long-term transits are really good for what we want to do with our lives in, you know, career. People who want to be in therapy, recovery, counseling, and, you know, or you know, this might be a good time for you if you're a Cancer rising, because Jupiter is going to bestow some type of luck and in association with groups. It's going to make you maybe even more favorable among the group. And Saturn gives you the fortitude to pull through and to keep doing it for the benefit of the group. And so that might be a good time. Might get a good time for that. The Gemini risings. Okay. So Jupiter and Saturn were just in your 8th house. And so you underwent most likely a change. I definitely know a lot of Gemini risings. For some reason, I do. And some of them, a few of them actually, there's been a big change in their life. They had to make different commitments to different things. And so what it does is the Gemini rising experience sometimes is about just, you know, trying to not always deal with the burden and harshness of certain feelings. And especially when you have, you know, Capricorn, if Capricorn's ruling your 8th house as a Gemini rising, like, it's this kind of disconnect of like, I don't always want to face these feelings. But situations happen to a lot of Gemini risings where you had to hold tight to your goals. You had to understand that something can happen. You didn't just change your mind. Mutable air sometimes can change its mind, change its focus. But Saturn and Jupiter in your 8th house were kind of forcing you to get emotionally committed to something. Not just committed mentally, Gemini rising, but emotionally commit to something. Now, the opportunities that now lie for you with Jupiter and Saturn in the 8th house is really thinking, you know, really thinking to yourself, what beliefs do you now have as a result of the 8th house transit? What do you now understand that you can put on center stage? The 9th house is where we go to express our beliefs. This is what my experience is. If you think of the 9th house as a stage, but we're listening to them, as opposed to the 5th house stage where we're looking, the performer, right? You know, the performer. The 1st house stage would be more so just, you know, a person who is constantly asserting themselves. You know, the first house stage is more so, ooh, that person's like this, so that person's that. Fifth house is performance. Ninth house is beliefs. When you watch those, some of you watch those shows, not shows, those programs of people, you know, the religious leaders on you know, on TV or whatever. That is ninth house energy. Here's the stage. Listen to me. I got the message. I have the belief, right? I have the spiritual knowledge or beliefs, the religious, whatever it is. Ninth house is not always religion. It's just whatever you believe. And so now I feel like if there's anything from the eighth house, what does it now help you understand more about life? You already went through the motions, Gemini Rising. Now, what is those experiences that you have now help you understand about life? Now, again, when I talk about transits, I talk about some things you're going to feel and some things you have to make happen for yourselves. I can say all this, and if you don't do anything, nothing of substance is going to happen, right? It's about what you feel like doing. But you can explore your belief systems as opposed to entertaining many ideas at once. You know, the ideas become attached to purpose. That's the difference with the ninth and the third house. The third house is great for getting the information, having the information, starting the conversation. But the ninth house has to end it with some type of belief. This is what I know. This is what I believe. And the ninth house also has to experience these things. So it's also about you experience, because there can be the ability for you to see outside of your groups that you already have. Where do you belong? Where do you belong? You know, because the third house or Gemini energy can be very much great for its immediate environment, third house, neighborhood. But what do you do outside of that is the real question. Aries Rising. So Jupiter and Saturn and Capricorn were just in your 10th house. So, you know, you're a cardinal sign and Capricorn's a cardinal sign. And this cardinal transit was the perfect time for you to settle into goals more permanent in nature. It was a great time for you, and you still might have had that very entrepreneurial, you know, adventurous, fearless type of attitude. And again, Aries doesn't always have to present like that. It just means the actions of some Aries. You do have some more introverted Aries, but you're always going to see through the actions of the Aries what they are trying to get done. It might have been difficult at first, though, because Saturn is not native to you. Saturn is about structure. There is a certain thing you have to follow. You can't just go on instinct like Aries Risings like to do, and Aries Suns as well. But you're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. You're starting to see what that experience was really trying to do for you. And now what's able to happen is something that you're learning, Aries Rising, again, and people are seeing this. Remember, your rising is what people are seeing that you're experiencing as well. That's what we have to understand about rising signs. People are seeing these experiences as we're going through them, right? Different than the sun. We'll talk. I have videos on the sun. But anyway, this is a chance for you to impact other people and not just think for yourself and not just be seen. Again, with reputation, being seen as, again, people might have seen your success through the 10th house if you're an Aries Rising who felt some type of success, or even if it's by success, it doesn't mean you have everything you want. I want us to be very clear on that. It means you might have achieved a goal that you hadn't before. You moved up a level. You did something you haven't done before. You got some type of achievement or recognition. Opportunities to mentor other people is possible with the 11th house, because now people might be coming to you for insight, for ideas. What do you think? And it's not just one person. You know, it could be lucrative for some of you. You know, it could be something that's beneficial for some of you. Saturn and Aquarius are both linked to the 11th house. Right? So this is an optimal time to raise your social profile and gain respect for what you think and what you do. By social profile, I mean Aries Risings people can look at Aries Rising people as leaders. Now, again, the sun is going to see what you actually feel comfortable projecting. And that's why sometimes there can be a disconnect between the rising and the sun, because it's like, wait, I'm not comfortable doing this, but everybody thinks I should be doing this, so I'm just going to do it. That's a whole different conversation. But, you know, it's a great time also for any of you who want to start and think technology-based, because we have Jupiter of optimism and we have Saturn of hard work. And Aquarius, well, 11th house is related to technology. Remember, 11th house is forward-thinking, futuristic stuff. It's from the 11th house. It's thinking of how do we do something to benefit society. And when you create an invention, it's not for you. It's usually for other people to consume as well. Pisces Rising. Okay, so Jupiter and Saturn in Capricorn would have just been in your 11th house. And so with Pisces Risings, what might have happened is you had people around you that helped you get through difficult times, perhaps, or they helped you see your purpose and potential. You know, they may have even supported goals you had to feel more confident about, you know. You feel that surge of, wow, people are here for me. And sometimes Pisces risings, you know, you go through experiences where you don't always feel that people are noticing all the things that you're capable of and that you want to do. Especially when we think of the fact that, well, if we have the Pisces rising and you have placements in the first house, that can be really good. But people who don't have any placements in the first house in your Pisces rising, and if Pisces is the only placement you have in Pisces in, you know, your chart, you know, it can sometimes feel like you're not being seen or supported through what it is that you really want to do, you know, or people aren't sure how to read you. But with that transit in the 11th house, I think people might have given you pep talks or given you support or given you advice or something like that, that helps you see something that you can do that is more meaningful, you know, that you know, helped you get a project or an idea or just get your confidence up in some way, because you do probably have a lot of good ideas. Now, the optimal time for any creative goals you have to help the collective. Okay. And there's different ways to help the collective. The 11th house is literally ideology, sharing, giving information, bringing groups together, things of that nature, networks. That's air, information, intellect, communication. The 12th house is compassion. The 12th house is spiritual. Now, even if somebody's not spiritual, it's their ability to give back, to see that, wow, these people need this, or these people are hurting, or wow, if I were just able to inspire people. That's 12th house energy. That's a different collective than the 11th house collective. Now, 12th house works in solitude, so this is going to feel different. This transit is going to feel different. And sometimes when you see Saturn in Aquarius, it is about feeling disconnected from the group, feeling disconnected from their ideology. But Jupiter there is also there to give you some support and some awareness. You might have to tap into Pisces sun energy a little bit more. Those Pisces suns, right? A lot of them are used to working alone, or used to being their own inspiration. So Pisces rising this year, well, not this year, it's going to be a couple years. Saturn's going to be in there for a while, and Jupiter we know is going to be in there for about a year. Okay. So, you know, it is going to be about being your own inspiration, you know, being your own inspiration, following your inspiration and letting it guide you. Because Saturn left alone can sometimes cause a little bit of depression. You know, I've said that before, Saturn in 12th house, because it's a very heavy, intense energy of discipline, but it's in the 12th house, which is spirituality, which is self-doubt, which is all the things imaginative. But Saturn doesn't belong in the 12th house. Saturn's confused there. It's like, wait, I'm trying to get something done, but you're putting me in this house of imagination. But what really can happen is Saturn energy there can be great for working in solitude, working on goals that make you more spiritually aware and have you be more centered as a human being on what you believe and what you are inspired by and what you're capable of. You know, it gives you a different level of strength than what we physically can see. You see what I'm saying? And so for you in Pisces risings, keep your mind on the big picture. You know, I definitely think, you know, it can feel a little troublesome at time. But again, I think what's going to happen is Jupiter being with Saturn for most of the time is going to help with that energy. Jupiter is going to give that kind of that feeling of, you know, luck and expansion. And when you feel down, you're going to always probably be able to find something to connect you outside of yourself. So don't forget to connect to things outside of yourself, but also understand that you might have to sometimes be your own inspiration, your own source of strength as you learn these lessons. You're learning a lesson. It's not about being alone for the sake of being alone. And you're going to have other transits. Get what I'm saying? It's not the end all be all, right? There's going to be other transits happening all the time. But I think it's also forcing you to understand who and what matters to you, and possibly get rid of some of these other, you know, distractions in your life that might not actually be giving you the actual support and inspiration that you need to move forward. So, you know, you've gotten a lot of support from the 11th house. The 12th house is forcing you to kind of look within and be comfortable looking within. Keep your mind on the big picture and understanding more who you are alone. And that's going to give you more of an understanding. You can combine what people have given you and supported you in, and now you're here to learn, but who am I when I don't have that? Am I still confident? Am I still myself? Am I still inspired when I don't have a whole cheerleading team behind me? Who am I? All right, so for the Taurus risings, Jupiter and Saturn would have just been in your 9th house. And so what this does to the Taurus rising is it familiarizes you with things that are actually outside of your comfort zone. So you have to get familiar with what's not familiar. And so a lot of you might have had goals outside of your comfort zone, things that maybe you felt by Saturn's influence you were pushed to do, or things you kind of came upon and realized you had to actually start putting in some work when it comes to your beliefs and your morals and your messaging, and really trying to identify what it is that gives you a source of enlightenment, what actually helps you understand life in a more profound way. And I think through that, though, Taurus risings and Taurus in general can work really hard at the goals they've set for themselves and work really and have a lot of patience. What it did was it taught you, or maybe showed you, that goals come in all shapes and sizes, and that it doesn't always have to be something that you're building to a resource, right? And sometimes it's seriously using the energy to simply learn different types of achievement, especially when we think of the ninth house. The ninth house is not about anything that is easily gotten. It's experience. It's through experience, right? And maybe having different goals when it comes to understanding your own beliefs, challenging yourself, but also getting that wisdom, because Jupiter rules that ninth house. Now, as Jupiter and Saturn go into your 10th house of career and image, it's now the time for, a lot of time Taurus risings, and I think even other risings as well, sometimes don't immediately feel noticed or recognized for what they do. People kind of take people for granted. I think that happens a lot with Taurus risings, Virgo risings, Pisces risings. There's like people kind of just take these people for granted of what you're capable of or what you'll do, and they're surprised if you actually achieve or do something grand. And now it is the time. Doesn't mean you haven't done it before, but this transit with Aquarius being in the 10th house, now Taurus rising, if you have not yet done so, you can learn from your associations. More so creating those associations, but having goals, not just, oh, I want to meet new people, but understanding how other people can be influential and they can help your progress. Understanding, Taurus rising, what your career goals are. If you want to change, if you feel like there's something that you're not quite satisfied with, reach out to other people. Find people that you know who have their people who know these other people. That's really a great time to do that. It's a great time to branch out, even if it's something you're usually not comfortable doing. And any ambitions that you have that are brand new, that require discipline, yet also can give you more knowledge in your field, or can give you new hope and inspiration for how you feel you are recognized within the world, is really, there's a lot of potential for you to really capitalize on the energy that's going on right now with your chart.